Hi, everyone. I'm excited to be here today to talk to you about some of the miracle stories that are happening right here in our own city, in our own state, every day. My name is Tony Kausha, and the title of our show is Tony's 50,000 Coincidence Miracles. Please note, this show is not about religion, and we're not trying to change anyone's religion, and we're not trying to get you to join any religion. It's just about miracle stories. I don't know of any religion on the planet that doesn't talk about miracles. That's why religions begin, because they have something that's telling them there's really a God. But we're not going to get into that. We're going to just talk about miracles and leave the decisions about all that up to you. So we don't care what religion you are. We just want to talk about miracles. If you are an atheist, I think you'll enjoy the program as well, although I can't guarantee you'll remain an atheist very long after you hear many convincing stories, coincidence kinds of stories about miracles. You can email me your own stories if you wish. We'll try to use all we can on the show. I can't guarantee we will, depending on volume and time, but you're welcome to send your stories on to us, and we will mention them when we can. You can send them to the following email address. But please notice that if we do use your story, we won't mention your name. We'll keep you anonymous. And we suggest that in your story, when you send it to us, don't use your correct name. That way anyone listening will not be able to figure out that it was you that sent the story in. The email address you can send your stories to is very easy to remember. It consists of 2 words and 3 numbers. The first word is Tony, spelled Tony, and the second word is and, spelled A-N-D, and the numbers are 777. So once again, the name is Tony and 777 at AOL.com. Well, let us begin. Well, this is week number 15, and you might remember last week I shared a story about how I was very busy rushing around, trying to get a lot of things done, was not hearing God speak to me or getting any inspirations really. And you heard about how I wasn't talking to Him correctly and I wasn't settling down and paying attention to Him. Well, I thought I'd share another one of those typical days, because in the last 50 years I've had a few days like that. And I had to learn a process of how to talk to God, settle down, realize you're talking to God Almighty, and when you're talking to Him, it's as if the whole universe has to stop moving because He's everywhere. So it's a pretty serious thing when you're talking to God, and He becomes a good friend of ours, and He allows us to be comfortable with Him, but we need to be careful we don't get too comfortable. So I thought I'd share another one of those events where I was getting sloppy in the way I was talking to Him. So this coincidence miracle is called Ask God License Plate. Once again, Ask God License Plate. Turns out that I was trying to make some serious decisions at a point in my life. And what happens, if you're educated and you've studied a lot of things, you've read a lot of books, you've learned a lot of things in life, you at some point in life, I don't know, it might be 12 years old, might be 16 or 18, you start to think you know some things. So when you go out to ask somebody for advice, especially if you're going to ask God for advice, you get a sense within yourself that, well, I already know how to do that, or don't bother him, or don't bother my friends with a question. I know how to do those things. I've done those things many times. So having solved a lot of problems in life, we often enter into our problems immediately trying to solve them on our own without getting any help. And so I was doing that for a while, trying to make some serious decisions. Well, I spent about 3 days. I'd make a decision, and then an hour later I'd change my mind. I'd think some more. I'd make a decision, and 2 hours later I'd change my mind. And then I would make a great decision. I decided I've solved it all now, and I'd wake up in the morning, and I'd have other perspectives. And so for like 3 days, I kept having decisions being changed over and over and over. In the back of my mind, because I had been talking to God for several years already, in the back of my mind, I kept having this silent whispering just 2 words. Ask God. It kept saying, ask God, just 2 words. A-S-K-G-O-D, ask God. But as I pointed out a minute ago, if you've spent a lot of years, I was already at the age of about 45 at this point, so you get to a point where, as I say, you sit down and you try to solve a problem and you figure you can solve it because you've solved similar problems over the last 45 years. And so this went on for like 3 days. And then one day I was out shopping and running some errands. And again, I got another flickering in my mind that said, ask God. And so I pulled the car over. I was in a parking lot at one of the places I was shopping. I pulled the car over and decided to just sit still, pay attention, make a final decision on this thing that's been going on for 3 days, and that'll be it. Whatever I decide, that'll be it. So I pulled over, and now it got louder in my head. Ask God, ask God. So I dwelt on that inspiration for a minute, and I thought, well, I could ask God anything. Why don't I just ask God what to do and do what he tells me? How about that? Instead of assuming that he'll be annoyed because I'm bothering him. And just as I did that, I said, I'm going to get serious now, and I'm just going to ask God. A car pulled in front of me. I couldn't miss it. Its license plate was an official Connecticut license plate, and the license plate said 2 words. It said, ask God. I got to tell you, I really had quite an experience when that happened. For 3 days, I kept hearing this very silent, calm voice saying, ask God, and now what happens? A license plate pulls up in front of me. Well, I followed the car. I got inspired to follow them and talk to them about, what made them arrive in front of my nose and why do they have a plate like this? I had a lot of questions. I was so amazed. I wanted to make sure there wasn't an angel driving the car. I'm just kidding, but you never know. Might be an angel. So I followed them for a while, and not too far, I guess about a mile, and they pulled into another parking lot. So I got out of the car, and as I approached their car, I could tell they already knew. They saw me following them, and they already knew because many people had done this before. We had a wonderful discussion. Turns out that this person also, like me, had been asking God questions for many years. They learned that it's very, very possible, and they really consciously decided to get an official license plate and advertise, ask God. And they said they've had many people stop them and ask them. And so we spent a long time talking. I have to tell you, they helped me to increase my faith 100-fold. And from that day on, I'm convinced more and more that we can ask God anything we want to ask him. Our next miracle is another miracle that shows how God uses numbers in our life, kind of patting us on the head, patting us on the back, saying you did a good job, things like that, or warnings. And this miracle had to do with the mall. So the title of this miracle is Numbers at the Mall. I was inspired by God. I was asked him how to do the to-do list that I had to get done, and put them in order for the day. And so I reached the item that said get to the mall and do some shopping, and some things I had to get done. And so I had to get 5 things. I thought, well, that's great. I'll go to the mall. I'll get everything done there. And drove over to the mall, went inside, spent about 2 hours trying to find the 5 things. I only found 2. I was a little frustrated. So as I was leaving the mall, walking toward my car, I was frustrated and thinking, I must have got this wrong. I must have misunderstood God when I was talking to him. He told me to come here, get the 5 things. That was on my list, 5 things to get. And I didn't get the 5, only got 2, so I wasted a lot of time. And so it's kind of wondrous. That happens often, when you're dealing with God. He's perfect, and we can't understand everything perfectly when we're talking to him and listening to him. And so there's always this gray area. That's good, by the way, because it never makes us feel like we got it all together, makes us rely on him. So that's a good thing. So I got to my car. I got in my car, went to start it, and I looked out the front window, and there was a row of cars in front of me. And the first license plate on the left, slightly to the left of me, its license plate number had the letter H, like H for Henry or H for he. It had 3 H's, HHH. The car next to it had 3 8s, the number 888. And my mind calculated, because I've been doing this for a long time, the letter H is the 8th letter of the alphabet. So 3 H's meant 888, and the license plate 888 meant 888. Well, it's a holy number, 888. It signifies the holy name of Jesus. And so, as he's done with me in the past, he just patted me on the head, patted me on the back, and said in my heart, "You came where I wanted you to come. You spoke to like 6 people inside. You mentioned me in a couple of cases. You helped someone who was downtrodden. You helped them to be uplifted. You came here for more things, Tony, than just your shopping list, and you did well inside, helping other people to notice me and think about me." And as I left, I pulled out of the driveway to go back home. I looked at my gas, contents of my gas tank, and I had to go on a long trip shortly, so I was inspired to stop for gas and top it off because I'll be on interstate highways. I don't want to run out of gas on interstate highways that often get bumper to bumper. So I went looking for a gas station and on the way home and pulled in. I don't know, maybe it was like 12-minute drive from the mall, pulled in, filled up the gas tank, and the bill came to $7.77. Again, $7.77. And God patted me on the head again and said, "You really did good at the mall." And I thought I'd show you with these numbers of the 3 H's, the 3 8's, and now the 3 7's. The next miracle I'd like to share with you is called the Church Virtual Tour. Virtual Tour. I like to, as you already know from prior recordings, I like to go for walks and talk with God as I'm walking and do my praying while I'm walking. I've done that for many, many years. And it has a good effect on me. When I'm doing that, I feel the presence of God in a powerful way. So I was going to go walk around the church grounds. The church is not too far away from my home, and I thought I'd drive over there and walk around in private in the back lot. It's pretty scenic and calm, and thought I would go. And I was planning to go about, I think it was like 2 o'clock, and I was inspired by God. No, I'll get these other things done first and go at 3 o'clock. So, all right, so I did the other things. I went over at 3 o'clock. I walked around the back lot. I said my prayers. I had conversations with Jesus. It was really a wonderful experience. And then I got inspired. It was time to go. So I got to my car and I was driving out. And as I drove around to the front of the church, there was someone going around snapping pictures with their cell phone. And they were talking to someone on the cell phone. I could hear that. It was a nice day. The car window was down. And I was driving slowly. And as I drove by where they were standing and talking, they said, "I don't know who this is. I don't know what statue this is of what person, but I'm showing you." And they were doing a virtual tour for somebody. So I turned the car around and went back and I said, "Hi, I thought I might be helpful to you. And by the way, I was inspired by Jesus to do this. I should have told you that. He told me to turn the car around and see if I could help them." So I turned the car around and I said, "Maybe I can be helpful to you. I heard you say you didn't know." And they said, "Oh, yes, please. I'm doing a virtual tour for people from the retirement community, the retirement club in town. And I'm giving them a virtual tour because of the coronavirus and people are shut in. Yes, could you please do so?" So I explained the history of the saint. It was Saint Francis of Assisi. I spoke of some of the highlights, and I got recorded, and they asked me some questions, and I answered, and it was a wonderful experience. And as I drove off, Jesus said, "We did good today, Tony, and this is why I wanted you to come here at 3 o'clock, because I knew the virtual tour would be going on." All right, God bless you all. I'll talk to you next week.